If they are really that abusive, why didn't you just leave? It's a question that comes up often from people trying to understand why someone stays stuck in or goes back to a toxic relationship. But the answer to that question is not always obvious, especially to people who have never lived through emotional and psychological abuse. Today, we're going to have a look at some of the reasons why people stay stuck within toxic relationships. And while the patterns can affect everyone, they often hit harder and stay hidden longer when the victim is a man. That's because male victims often face disbelief when they speak up. There's cultural minimization of the impacts of abuse to a man. And internally, there's pressure to appear strong, rational, and unaffected, even when we are in pain. These aren't just vague emotional reasons why you stay stuck. These are identifiable patterns and reasons. Some are even deliberate manipulation tactics used to keep you stuck. And some is just repeated psychological pressure. Let's explore some of the reasons why someone might stay trapped within a toxic relationship. First, there's cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the internal conflict that happens when your lived experiences do not align with what you are being told. You know something feels off, but your partner insists everything is fine and that you are the problem. This creates confusion internally. You start to question your own perception of reality. Moments of harm are quickly followed by affection or denial, keeping you emotionally unsteady. You can no longer tell what is real and what's been rewritten for you. That confusion, that becomes the trap. It stops you from trusting your instincts and delays your ability to act. For men especially, this is compounded by social messaging. If you are confused or uncertain, you are weak. So you bury that dissonance and live in the fog just a little bit longer. Another reason is psychological destabilization. Psychological destabilization is when an abusive partner over time erodes your confidence within your own judgment. It happens through gaslighting and ridicule, contradictions, and persistent corrections of your beliefs. You might begin to doubt your memory, or even your emotional responses, or your ability to interpret a situation clearly. You might start walking on eggshells, not just to avoid conflict, but because you're no longer sure what's actually reasonable. It's not just self doubt, it's psychological destabilization. You feel unanchored and unsure. And that's exactly what keeps you compliant. Trying harder, not walking away, and surrendering power just a bit by bit keeps you stuck and trapped. Next is trauma splitting. Trauma splitting is a survival response. When the abuse becomes overwhelming, your mind breaks it into parts so that you can function. There are days you genuinely can't recall anything bad that ever occurred in a relationship. It feels like things were mostly okay. You might even miss them and love them. Then a small moment or a memory hits, and suddenly the pain comes rushing back in, sharp and undeniable. But then soon after, it fades away again, and you're back to doubting yourself. It's almost like there is a version of you that remembers everything and a version of you that doesn't remember a thing. This mental fragmentation keeps you tethered because it's hard to leave something that your mind won't fully let you remember. And when people around you only saw the good moments, your confusion deepens. You start to wonder if the bad really was that bad or if you're just exaggerating it. Next is entrapment. Entrapment is the result of threats, isolation, sabotage, or long term erosion of independence. This means that many victims don't stay because they want to, they stay because they believe they have no other option. It might sound like, "You'll never survive without me. No one will believe you. If you leave, I will take everything." Or it might show up in court filings and smear campaigns and financial restrictions or direct interference with your job or your parenting. When this happens to a man, the consequences are often more immediate. We fear losing access to our children, or we'll be afraid that even the accusation of abuse will cost us our reputation, our career, and our safety. So we choose to stay, not because it's safe, but because leaving feels like an even greater risk. Next is loss of agency. Loss of agency means the lack of ability to make choices for yourself. In an abusive relationship, your choices get chipped away slowly, and to be honest, sometimes without you even noticing. You start to find yourself bit by bit asking for permission for things. You check in before you do something because you're not sure how she will react. You might delay your own needs or hesitate before speaking, and then check in to make sure that it's okay. Over time, when this continues, you find yourself no longer acting for yourself entirely. Partly because you feel like you need to please the abuser by checking in with them and asking for permission, but also because you're fearful of how they would react if you did something independently. You're no longer allowed to choose yourself. Your abuser is the one who has to choose for you. So when you're in an abusive relationship and you have a loss of agency, you feel like you have to ask permission to leave. Next, there's the trauma bond. A trauma bond is a deep emotional attachment formed through cycles of abuse and intermittent reinforcement. You're harmed, then comforted, criticized, then praised, devalued, then idealized. These swings activate the brain's reward system. You become addicted to the highs and deeply fearful of the lows. You begin to believe that the pain is part of the love, that if you can just be better, the calm will last. And when you're trauma bonded, leaving feels like betraying someone you love, even when they are the one who is hurting you. This can be devastating for male victims because it creates a deep internal conflict. You know something is wrong, but the emotional attachment is real. And walking away doesn't feel like freedom, it feels like abandonment, failure, or giving up. Next, there's hope. Most people don't stay in an abusive relationship because they're broken. They stay because they still have hope that things will get better, that love can fix it, that the version of the relationship they were sold in the beginning will return. This is often reintroduced by moments of calm or kindness or hoovering. You think, maybe we've turned a corner. But once you do, the abuse returns, and each cycle of calm only makes the next explosion more destabilizing because you start to think it's your fault the peace did not last. Men are often told to hang in there, do the work, and be the stable one. This cultural script keeps them locked in that effort, and when things do not improve, they blame themselves instead of the pattern. Next is cultural disbelief. Cultural disbelief is one of the hardest traps for male victims of family violence because it's not created by the abuser, it's created by society. Cultural disbelief sounds like she's just emotional. Or, and this genuinely happened to me when I sat down in front of a clinical psychologist 20 minutes into our first meeting and spoke about the abuse that I was facing. She stopped the interview and said, "Well, hang on a second. Men are statistically the abusers. Do you want me to pull up the stats right now and show you?" Or when you're interviewing a lawyer for the first time and they say, "She's a mother, courts will not take your side." Or worse, it's just silence when you speak up. When a man does try to speak up about emotional abuse, he's often met with minimization, ridicule, or suspicion. Even professionals like therapists and police and judges will miss the signs. And when your story is dismissed, you actually retreat further. You stop talking and you stop asking for help. You self isolate. This is what keeps male victims stuck the longest. Because if nobody sees it, no one can support you. And if no one names it as abuse, you start believing it isn't. And it's part of the reason why Stand Again exists. These are just some of the reasons why people stay within toxic and abusive relationships. They are real, they are valid, and they're often invisible to anyone who hasn't lived them, and sadly, I have. If you're still in it, or if you've just left, know this: it wasn't weakness, and it wasn't you being passive. It was the result of long term conditioning by someone who made it their mission to rewrite your reality. This is Stand Again, lived experience platform for male survivors of family violence. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice might just help another man find his. If you're looking for one on one support, you can book coaching with a member of the Stand Again team. Simply visit standagain.com.au, where you will also find grounded information on surviving and recovering from family violence as a man. As always, remember that no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you can stand again.